Hello. It's hot here, very hot. But you wouldn't expect Saudi Arabia to be anything else. We're in Jeddah on the Red Sea coast, and we've come to witness a first. Not only is this the first time that the America's Cup has visited this part of the world, but it's the first time that any Grand Prix sailing of any kind has taken place here. And it's an eye-opener. The sailing conditions have been unlike anything we'd expected. And the deep water meant that the racecourse was closer to the shore than we've ever seen before. In short, the NEOM America's Cup preliminary event was a spectacle. If anybody came to Jeddah in Saudi Arabia thinking that light breezes and flat seas would make the second preliminary event an easy one to cope with, they were in for a big shock. Because on the first practice day, the breeze put everyone under pressure. Alinghi knew this. Having been here for 2 weeks before the other teams, and with both of their AC40s, they'd already had a taste of what Jeddah could deliver. But of course, the reality was that no one was taking this new venue for granted. There's no avoiding the fact that by midday it's pretty hot here. And when the temperature ashore breaks through the hazy inversion, the sea breeze kicks in. And when it does, it's usually in the low to mid-teens, which is plenty for foiling. But on the first practice day there was more. Plus there was also a very tricky chop to negotiate. The Red Sea is only around 100 miles wide up here, so there's not that much distance for a sea state to build. And while it's 600 metres deep just off the coast, there's a big reef just offshore that should offer some shelter and flatter conditions. Even then, there was still an awkward sea state that no one really understood, all of which meant that teams were having to think on their feet. And for those watching, it made for an entertaining afternoon. But aside from this, what were the teams thinking as they prepared for the 3-day series?
Oh, we're definitely here to go one better. We're here to win this event. It's been it was disappointing, obviously, not to win the last one. So, you know, we're here to keep improving our sailing, racing, and communication skills. But you know, we feel like we have the skills on board and the support around us to win the event. And you know, I think everyone would say the same thing. They're here to win. So, looking forward to it.
American Magic had won the first preliminary event. How confident did they feel?
Yeah, I think we're quietly confident that we're building something amazing here. I think every team probably has that feeling, but yeah, I definitely feel like we're really starting on that path of building a really strong team.
The British had had a shocker in Spain. What could Jeddah do for them?
Even though it is one design, there's still a lot that we can learn from these boats that will be relevant to the big boats, to the AC75s next summer. So yeah, we're like I said, we're putting a lot of effort into getting our performance up where it needs to be.
The Italians had decided to take a different approach.
Well, we are here with the new crew. We have Ruggero and Marco on the helm, and Vito and Umberto on the flight control and trimming. It was part of the plan since the beginning to do the first event with Jimmy and Keiko and the second one with Ruggi and Marco. I think it's an opportunity for us as a team, and it's a pleasure to see those guys sailing together because I mean, we are talking about the new generation of the Italian sailing. even if Ruggi won already a gold medal, he's probably going to go for another one in the next Olympic Games. So I'm really looking forward to see them in action.
But while the opening practice session delivered some great conditions, Jeddah isn't and hasn't been on the yacht racing circuit. So why here?
No, nothing's ever happened here before in terms of any significant sailing. I mean, there's some windsurfing and things, and it's a good venue for that. Why here? Why not here? I mean, all sports are finding their way here. There's an amazing coastline here that is just undiscovered. The wind conditions are great. You know, people will say, yeah, but, you know, in the end it's just for the money. And there's an element of that for sure. But the growth of the sport, I mean, can't stay static. The world's collapsing. You've got to do something, you know, with it. And if the sport's to grow, it's got to be in places like this, because the future is here. That is without doubt.
The following day was also due to be a practice day, but the weather had ramped up a few notches. 22 knots might not sound that much, but combined with the sea state that had picked up too, several teams decided not to risk breaking kit or crews ahead of the event. The Brits and the Kiwis, they went out. But the next day, the weather didn't about turn. The America's Cup organisers must have wondered what they had to do to get the weather leading up to their event to hang around long enough for the racing itself. Having had some great conditions during practice, come the racing, the breeze this morning was very light. Fortunately, there was 6 or 7 knots for the day, which allowed all 3 races to be completed. But it was nail-biting stuff. Drop off the foils and you were toast.
This is the umpires, OCS USA restart penalty, OCS Switzerland restart penalty. This is the umpires, USA disqualified, deliberately going way outside the boundary.
In short, the Kiwis delivered a masterclass to the rest of the fleet for the first 2 races.
As long as you've got good wind in front, it's all good. How's it look? Well done.
In race 2, it wasn't just the Kiwis that were repeating their performance.
This is the umpires, USA OCS restart. Going back quite slowly now.
The Swiss are very polished, and the young Italians are fearless when up against some of the best and most experienced sailors in the world. But no one could catch the Kiwis, at least not until the 3rd race of the day. By now, the young Italian team had enjoyed a few hours sailing together for real, and were now keen to show what they could really do, which started by delivering a thumping win against the entire fleet.
Here we go.
Bravi ragazzi. Questi li mandiamo tutti in NF. Fantastici, bravissimi.
The first 2 races were a bit ice-breaking, but then we managed to pull off a very good race, a win, which is also probably the first win of Luna Rossa in the AC40. So yeah, we are super happy about today, but we know that it's going to be a long way to go.
But the Americans were having a shocker. Out of 3 results, they had a DSQ, a did not start, and a solitary point.
It's one of those days where you just want to crawl away into a little hole and not see anyone for a while, but it's not what you do. You got to come here, face the music for your actions, and we've got to debrief what happened, and we've got to figure out how to get better, because it's not like the other teams, there wasn't enough wind and the other teams weren't foiling. All the other teams were foiling around the track. All the other teams were able to do the things that we weren't able to do. So we've got to look inwardly and focus on ourselves and improving our techniques.
I think you see all of the teams having their moments of struggling with these boats in these lighter conditions. They really are incredibly delicate just to get the balance right. But yeah, big step forward, still a long way to go, but really pleased with how the team have come back from the setback of Villanova and really dug deep to get ourselves back to the races.
When it came to thrilling racing, this was just the start. Day 2 didn't just raise the bar, it set a completely new standard in high-performance racing. It started with the pre-race flyby, which passed just metres away from the media centre. Until you've seen one of these machines doing over 35 knots, it's impossible to appreciate just what it looks like for real. But when the racing got underway, the show really started. 6 boats doing over 30 knots upwind and 43 knots downwind. Close calls, toe-curling tight crossings, and mark roundings that were stacked full of G-force. This was AC40s at their best. In fact, this was the first time that anyone had seen a full fleet of AC40s at full bore in an official race. And to make it even more captivating, we saw a 19-year-old deliver a lesson to the rest of the fleet for the second time in his second day of racing. Alongside his co-helmsman Ruggero Tito, 19-year-old Marco Gridoni demonstrated 2 things. 1, that their first victory was no fluke, and 2, that they were fearless in the face of some very experienced crews. And as the conditions got tougher through the day, they just kept pushing. The Kiwis got the upper hand in the next race and took the win, but it was clear that the Italians were in no mood to back off.
Looking good at the moment.
But by the end of the day, the Kiwis had been dominant. Winning 4 out of 6 races had secured their place in the match race final. Nathan, what a day. I mean, we could talk about the racing and the tactics, but I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about what it is like to be sailing in that intensity. I mean, it looked incredible today.
The boats are just fantastic. There's just no question about it. Like, we've done so much time training and sailing in these boats at those speeds and beyond. But to do it in a race when you're like marginal crossing with boats upwind and downwind, and yeah, it's intense. There's no question about that. And it's just what I think we love so much, and what everyone got to see today was you could race the boats hard, make good tactical decisions. It wasn't like the tack losses and jibe losses are so big that you can't do it. You can always do the extra manoeuvre. You got huge benefit from doing great roundings. Starting was obviously very important, like normal sailing was, and it was a real tactical battle in an extremely fast boat.
How hard was it actually keeping the beast under control, particularly downwind when the sea state got up? We could see the boat sort of nodding away and the foil popping out every now and then. It looked like it was on the edge, was it?
The boats definitely get a good bounce on in those waves, and like obviously we always try to push the boat to go as fast as you can, and definitely by that final race there was that balance between outright straight line performance and controlling it through the waves, and the jibes are obviously the hardest part, where you've got to go from full noise and you've got to start prepping for a jibe, and doing that transition is super important, and we almost lost it in the final jibe today on the finishing line. And yeah, they're just awesome boats to sail.
The last day saw 2 fleet races ahead of the match race final. The Kiwis were in, but who'd be facing them? Conditions looked to be a repeat of the day before, possibly a little stronger, and you could feel the tension on the dock. Just as on the day before, the racing was intense. Once again, the Italians were on fire, climbing from 3rd to 1st as they muscled their way past the Kiwis. It was an incredible performance in an amazing race.
Grant's penalty clear.
The Italians had now secured their place in the match race final. Normally this would have made the last fleet race a bit flat, but the action was full on once again. The Kiwis won this one with Alinghi coming second. When it came to the match racing final, the Italians pushed the Kiwis very hard throughout, but on the final lap Team New Zealand was stretching ahead. And then came the faceplant of the week, as Luna Rossa lost it at the final windward mark. Kiwis went on to win a well-deserved victory. They've been the quickest and the most consistent throughout. While this might have been the end of the AC40 series, there was plenty to contemplate going forwards, including the Youth America's Cup. If the Italian performance is an indication of what can be achieved with talented youngsters, the Youth America's Cup looks set to be quite an event.
Y yachts have created something quite extraordinary, the Vabre 75. This 23-metre long day sailor was created in conjunction with Coastline Yacht Design, and while she looks stunning from the outset, there are some innovative details above and below decks. The most obvious is her fold-down bulwarks that create a spacious and beamy aft deck when she's at anchor. This, along with a beamy, clutter-free cockpit, makes the most use of the space that's available. For those with racing in mind, she's been designed to be sailed by a crew of 6 and uses water ballast to generate additional righting moment and power when she needs it. Below decks, the interior was styled by Wendover Studio and is as striking as it is simple in layout, which, as it happens, is a good way of describing pretty much every aspect of this stunning looking day sailor.
Hudson Yacht Group, the builders of HH Cats, know that efficient power generation is a big issue for many of their clients. The sports version of their HH44 and 52 models incorporates the kind of advanced tech you'd expect, like C-section carbon daggerboards and carbon spars. But this configuration also has more than 4.2 kilowatts of solar and regeneration power. And it's the parallel hybrid diesel-electric eco-drive system that the company is particularly proud of, as it can also act as a hydro generator while sailing. HH Cats claim that the system can deliver 1.5 to 3 hours of electric propulsion without requiring a large battery bank. Combined with the solar panels, the system is said to be capable of generating 50 kilowatts of power that's stored in the lithium batteries. So perhaps it's not surprising that nearly all of the HH44s, 52s and 60s currently on order have the eco-drive box ticked.
Design gurus Jodl Vrolik have been asked a question. Was it possible to create a modern, competitive, short-handed IRC racer in the spirit of the original Class 40 with the ability to cruise? The answer wasn't obvious, but after a great deal of research and development, they believe they've created the solution, the JV43. As you might expect, the overall beamy scow type looks are very much that of the modern breed of Class 40s. The 5-winch cockpit layout and the crew protection clearly comes from the latest thinking in this fleet too. But unlike the hollow shells of a modern Class 40 below decks, the JV43 has an interior, and one that weighs in around 150 to 200 kilos right on top of the keel. The sail plan is based on the successful 42-footer Eno, but uses the same spar tooling and the same deck hardware as modern Class 40. And being built by Ocean Tech in Slovenia, in a 3-stage vacuum infusion of e-glass and core cell foam, the JV43 gets another tick in the box.
The benefits of a wing sail over a conventional sail are well known. The trouble is that managing a wing sail is often much harder. Until now. The ACC wing has a carbon mast with no spreaders, around which a soft wing sail rotates. The really clever bit is the way in which the camber of the sail can be changed on either side of the sail. Changing the shape is achieved by pumping air into what the company calls mussels. These are made of thin silicon tubing and are attached on either side of the sail. Pumping air in shortens the tubes, which creates a concave shape on the windward side. The tubing is very thin and uses very little air, which means there's no big power draw. On their 56 square metre prototype rig, they used a dive bottle which lasted for a week of sailing. The list of benefits is long, but aside from being very efficient, it's said to be extremely easy to handle. In short, it's an ingenious solution to a time-honoured problem.
X-Yachts needs no introduction. Famous for its slippery performance, ease of handling and distinctive good looks, it must be difficult to keep moving the game forwards, but apparently not. According to X-Yachts, the XC47 is the beginning of a new generation, a high-performance blue water cruiser that has been designed to be handled short-handed. The process meant a detailed study of every detail from the deep V bow, the wider stern and the soft chines, to the precise runs of control lines and deck gear positions. And while they believe that these and other detailed refinements make for a better boat, what will be most noticeable to anyone who knows the brand is the striking new superstructure style. They call it their semi-deck saloon, which provides more light and a better view from down below. Company CEO Crane Brink Nielsen says the XC47 is probably the best yacht they've ever built. Now that's quite a claim that will no doubt be judged by the public at the Dusseldorf Boat Show in January.
British offshore sailor Sam Goodchild is a bit of a rock star. He's sailed and succeeded in many of the most advanced offshore classes there are, and his latest move has been into the world of IMOCAs in preparation for next year's Vendée Globe. In his new boat for the Planet, he's created quite an impact already, having just won the IMOCA Globe Series. That is seriously impressive. And so were his two blasts across the Atlantic this winter. The first was the Transat Jacques Vabre, a double-handed race from Le Havre to Martinique, in which he and co-skipper Antoine Coq finished third in an incredibly competitive fleet of 40 boats. The return race was single-handed from Martinique to Lorient in France, where he also came third. In fact, all 5 of his results in the IMOCA Globe Series were third, and that is a massive achievement. I caught up with Sam shortly after he'd finished the TJV and ahead of his race back, and I started by asking him about the double-handed TJV. Sam, good to see you. Well, first of all, well done. What a trip across the Atlantic.
Yeah, it's pretty full on. We had to wait for it a little bit with a 9-day delay or whatever it was, but no, once we got off, it had a lot to it, didn't it? I think for spectators, it was about as good as they come, Transats, don't they?
Yeah. I mean, just on that start, I mean, that's unprecedented. I don't think we've ever seen a delay of that long. It was a week, wasn't it, before you got going?
Yeah, well, we went to start on the Sunday and we ended up starting on Tuesday. So, yeah, 9 days. Yeah, over a week is definitely... I mean, I've had a few Transat starts delayed, but only like the max I've ever seen is 3 or 4 days, I think. So, yeah. And once you have a date, I mean, for me anyway, once I had a date, it was a lot easier because then you can, you're working kind of back into the processes. Okay, we've got 3 more days. Okay, weather briefing, D-3, D-2, D-1. You kind of got a little bit more meat to get your teeth into as opposed to just looking kind of blankly at weather files being like, oh, is there a hole there? Oh, no, it's a bit windy. So, yeah, no, I mean, once we got a date, it was a bit easier, but definitely the bit in the middle where you don't really know when you're starting. I mean, we've been aiming at 29th of October for a year and a half, and then suddenly it was gone. It was all a bit weird, but it was nice to get back into it. And then, I mean, as always, once you're on the water and on the start line, it's all long forgotten.
Yeah, and it was an incredibly competitive fleet, as we'd expect. We're only a year away from the Vendée Globe, so we're going to expect that anyway. How did you feel about your performance?
Well, I mean, the result is better than we ever imagined, really, finishing on the podium. I mean, if you look at the boats around us, there's a lot of experience and there's a lot of fast boats and new boats around us. So to finish third, I mean, there's certain circumstances around that, but I mean, as in all races, and finishing third is obviously great. And I mean, if we got off of that at the start, we definitely would have signed straight away. So no. I mean, really quite proud and quite satisfied of the result. And it puts a little bit of pressure on for the rest of the project, but it means we're working in the right direction anyway.
Well, nothing else. The boat's quick. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, there's so much around it between. Well, the fact that we were double-handed, not single-handed, the fact that there wasn't much sea state in the trade winds, which sails you choose. We're in the right ballpark, but it doesn't mean for the Vendée Globe we can play third, but yeah, we're in the right ballpark, so can't complain.
Yeah, talk me through sort of the key points of the race. And when I look over here, because I'm looking at the tracker, looking at your progress. But yeah. How would you, if you had to sort of summarise how the trip went as far as from a racing point of view, what were the key moments?
So, I mean, the first key moment was the first 36 hours where obviously there are quite a few boats dropping out. We had the passage through the front. We had a few technical issues. I think everyone had some sort of technical issues. It was I mean, we had 35 knots leaving the channel, and then had to go through a front on the first night. So on the second night rather. So that was kind of the first bit. Obviously a bunch of boats turning around and some losing miles. Then there was the going south, which was the massive question, was go north or go south, which, I mean, we've been asking ourselves from before the start. But you didn't actually have to make the decision until well, I mean, the guys that went north ended up making it very late, probably too late for optimizing the route, but until off Cape Finisterre was the time we really had to make the decision. And there seemed to be pretty much a gentleman's agreement to go south.
It's what it looks like,
which most people adhered to. And then a couple of boats peeled off, but that was the first bit. And then it was through the light wind patch off Portugal, trying to get through the ridge, the Azores high pressure. And then once we'd hooked into the trade winds, it was, the Canaries were a bit of an obstacle, trying to get through the Canaries. And then it was a downwind drag race with a few jibes, but primarily drag race across the Atlantic, basically.
Quite a split in the fleet, wasn't there? There was a sort of looking at it as sort of, well, almost half the fleet decided to go north and half went south.
Yeah, it's a really interesting exercise because it's, the point when we had to make the decision, the routing, so our weather software was basically telling us that we would ride 36 hours earlier taking the north route, which is a huge difference.
Yeah.
But in the south, you're going to get into the trade winds, and you're going to be 100% of your polars. There's no sail changes. There's no bad sea state. You're going to be 100% your polars for a week, 8 days, 9 days. And in the north, you had to go through a front. So you go to the front, you go through the whole sail wardrobe, the whole gearbox, as Anton, my co-skipper, said it. You have to go from J3, 2 reefs, and you have to go 1 reef, J2, full main, J2. And then through the big sails, go downwind out the backside, and then the next front you have to go back through the gearbox, and so there's a lot of time lost in that. And then there's a lot more sea state where we can struggle at the moment to forecast how much that impacts boat performance, because it depends on so much, not just wave height but wave direction and period length, the length between waves, and that's what we really struggle with. So the question was, how much are you going to lose with all that, which is a bit of an unknown. And then on top of that, all the risk of breaking, the fact that you're going upwind and bigger seas and more wind. So that was definitely weighed in a lot of people's minds for sure. And I mean, we had a first 24 hours with more breakages than we've had in the rest of the year. So that we were like, hang on a minute, if in 24 hours we've broken all that, what's going to happen for a week of this? So it didn't help. And I think that that probably pushed a few people south, even if it wasn't breakages on your boat, just to see that there's 4 boats dropped out with structural issues and 3 boats stopped with mainsails ripped in half and stuff like that. It kind of, you're like, hang on a minute, is maybe even if it's quicker on the paper, is it really worth the risk? Yeah. And then when we spoke to the boats that did went north, well, there were two foiling boats that went north, so there were 2 which were a risk to us and the south group, if you like. Well, one of them dropped out didn't drop out, but finished 20th because they broke their mainsail and were just out of the race, really. And the other boat, they came in 6th or 7th with a bunch of issues, but they probably got a better result in the north than they would have done in the south.
We're getting so used to seeing foiling boats and the new sort of radical style and the new extreme foils and the rest of it, that when we're watching it on the outside, I guess it's easy for people like me and others to sort of take it for granted that, yes, okay, so that's a foil. But how far up that learning curve is the fleet, and how far up it are you?
I guess the issue is you don't know where the end is. But if you ask how much we learned, I mean, it's loads. If you look at the way we sail the boat in the Canaries, the way we sail the boat in the Caribbean, which was the same sail setup, same boat, so like nothing changed in sail setup and sea state really, it's radically different. And because there's so many elements to it, there's obviously the foils, there's the rake of the foils, there's the ballast, the weight in the boat, the stacking, there's the keel, how do you use the keel angle, there's how do you trim your sails, there's and then there's the whole pilot side of things. And everyone talks about, we don't drive anymore, we just put the pilot on, put it on auto and you're fine. But we're trying to teach the pilot to drive as we would, which has got some huge advantages because it's got cap sensors which are to 0.1 of a degree, which is more than we could ever have. But some disadvantages, it hasn't got any foresight. So there's things you can work on and not work on. But I mean, we like even the day of the finish, we were trying different ways of sailing the boat. And that's great. Look, he's 10 centimetres of the sail and trimmed on a bit more main, and the whole boat's got a completely different feel to it. So I mean, I love learning. If you look at my sailing career for the last 10 years or so, I've changed classes quite regularly. And what I love about that is you just never stop learning. And there's things which we can take from the 50-foot try or the 100-foot try or the monohulls and bring them here, and things which don't transfer at all. So, yeah, I mean, I love learning, and it's I mean, that's what drives me the most, I guess, is learning how to make something work. And Olympic sailing wouldn't be for me, because when you start getting into perfection, I start getting a bit bored and wanting to do things a bit differently. But it's part of the sport I love anyway.
Give us your view on sort of the front runners in the fleet. Who have you got your eyes on?
I mean, the top four are fairly. I mean, it's the four most experienced, most successful skippers of the last 5-10 years with brand new boats. I mean, they've kind of, on the paper, they are the ones to beat. So that is Tom Marillon, who's won the last the last 4 transats, and he had a good Vendée Globe but didn't win it. Who's the boat in our team? There's Charlie Dallin, who's obviously been up there on all the podiums. If he hasn't won, he's finished second. He wasn't on the race for the Jaques Vabre because he had a medical issue, but we're all hoping he'll be back as soon as possible. Then there's Jeremy Pugh, who's probably got the biggest project around. He's been working with Frank Camas, and he's obviously got a lot of potential. And then the other one, which is I lied saying that they've all been the favourites in the last 5-10 years, but it's Johan Riesch. He hasn't been sailing that many IMOCAs, but he's obviously got a brand new boat. He's won the last 2 Route de Rums in the Class 40 and the Figaro, so he's marked there as a favourite already. So I mean, those are the 4 to beat in a way. And then behind that pack, there's a bunch of boats which I think we've sort of established ourselves in that pack as in terms of Metrocoque, who won the last Vendée with a new boat, V&B, Maxime Sorel, who has a decent race in a new boat. And obviously there's Team Malizia and Boris Herman, who's an interesting one because he's all his focus on the Route de Rome. He doesn't really care about this transatlantic races. He's been very clear as he's designed and built his project and his boat around being fast in the Southern Ocean to win the Vendée Globe.
So the race you've done across TJV double-handed, but the race back is single-handed. So, I mean, it's probably pretty good preparation, but how are you feeling about that?
It's going to be in the corner of my mind for the whole year. But, I mean, we haven't really had any time to prepare for it because the TJV takes up so much time anyway. And, yes, it's kind of crept up on us. But at the same time, I kind of say you can't really hope for more, having just done a double-handed transat just before it. And having everything in the boat in your mind, and it's on top of that, you're leaving for the Caribbean, upwind and trade wind, so you get into it nice and slowly and easily. There's nothing too major about it, and then it might finish in strong conditions. So it's, in a way, it's kind of dream perfect conditions to do a first solo transat, but there's definitely a few unknowns in there. So we'll see how it goes, especially the second half. But it's gonna be an interesting one, and like I said earlier, everyone's talking about taking it easy, but I don't see that happening once you actually put race boats on a start line and sailors in them.
The solo race back was every bit as competitive as the double-handed race out, and it needed to be. For many of the competitors, this race would count towards their qualification for the Vendée Globe. But the race was also a valuable test, the next key step along the route to the solo lap of the planet that starts in November 2024. Winning the IMOCA Globe Series has confirmed once again just how good Goodchild really is.
Winning the Cape to Rio race is guaranteed to attract attention, but when you achieve it in a 52-foot cruising cat, expect heads to turn. And that is precisely what happened when the Balance 526 Nori took line honours in the 2023 race. Balance Cats was set up in 2013 by Hobie Cat World Champion Philip Berman. His goal was to create comfortable cruising built cats that had long legs and could perform while carrying a decent payload. Their first boat was the 526, which quickly led to a 580 and a 620, all built by the Parman brothers in St Francis, USA. But as demand continued to grow, Balance Catamarans Cape Town was set up to build the 442 and the 482 models. To describe this as a success would be a big understatement. No less than 40 of the 442s have been ordered since its debut in 2022. And it doesn't stop there. Apparently, there's a balanced 750 on the way.
The growing sports boat and high performance scene has triggered a rethink for clothing, which has resulted in Muster expanding its LPX range. In essence, it's a more streamlined version of the new HPX Ocean Spec kit, with the focus on making it easier to move around. Pockets, collars and hoods, along with many other details, came up for review in order to ensure that the new designs work well in the fast-moving sports boat environment. But the new range seeks to go further in catering for a wide range of conditions, from sunshine and no breeze to breeze and driving rain. The new kit is also designed to be used ashore and afloat, which is good news for the many crews who need to arrive in what they intend to wear for the day.
The self-tailing winch. What more can be said about a device that's been with us for around 50 years? Well, according to Ronsdown, we've been missing a trick for decades. Because their new Orbit winch is not only a very clever piece of innovative thinking, but could change the way we handle our sails. The benefits of a self-tailing winch are obvious when you're sheeting in, but easing out is more tricky and often requires the winch handle to be removed. But with the Orbit, a simple rotation of the top of the winch with one hand and the line can be eased with the other without taking the line out of the jaws. Plus the winch handle stays in too. And if that isn't enough, the entire winch can be disassembled without any tools in under a minute. Hardly surprising perhaps that the Orbit winch has already won a major award.
For the 37th America's Cup cycle, Jeddah in Saudi Arabia is the only racing venue that's outside Spain, and the region is keen to prove that it's a good fit. Samir Baghdadi is the CEO of the Saudi Sailing Federation and was instrumental in bringing the America's Cup preliminary event to Jeddah. A keen kiteboarder, she was one of the first 4 women to head up a sports federation in Saudi Arabia and is keen to point to the changes that are taking place across sport in the region. Over 35 Saudi federations are claimed to now have a women's national team. Baghdadi believes that the AC40 event will play a big part in opening up sailing in the region. New initiatives, including a Discover Sailing programme to encourage people onto the water and a performance pathway programme for talented sailors to train at the top level, are said to be 2 examples.
Racing around the Western Approaches proves to be very popular. The 4th edition of the Dream Cup in 2022 received 134 entries, and it's easy to see why. I should know, I've taken part. From Mini 6.5s, Figure 3s and IRC fleets among others through to the Class 40s, IMOCAs and the giant Ulteam Tries. This is a race designed to appeal to all classes of offshore racing. The variety of courses are at the heart of the success. While all classes start from the same line off Cherbourg and finish at around the same time in La Trinité-sur-Mer, the courses reflect the variety of entries. The IRC boats, multi-2000s and the smaller, older multi-hulls have a 600-mile course via Wolf Rock. The IMOCAs, Class 40s, Ocean 50 Tries have a longer 1,000-mile course that sees them round the Fastnet Rock. And while the old teams also round this famous rock, they go via the Isle of Man before heading to Bilbao and onto the finish line in France. The race starts on the 15th of July.
Once again, and as always, thanks so much for watching. Keep your comments coming, keep watching on Facebook, X and now Instagram, and of course our website and blog. Stay safe, keep well, and season's greetings. Until next time.